Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live stream with Valentina Alto on AI agents, the next leap for assistance to intelligent automation. But before we get started on that, I want to give you a few quick words on what we have coming up. And also, as always, if you're joining this live stream, please say hello, tell us where you're joining from, and maybe add in what you do. And of course, do not forget to add your voice to this conversation. So post your questions also. And let's see here. So a couple of things we have coming up. We have our schedule for ODSC East is just announced, and Valentina is actually also on that schedule. She'll be talking at ODSC East from May 13th to 15th. Giving a virtual workshop there. We can talk a little bit more about that, but our schedule is released, and you may have noticed if you checked out the schedule already, and if you haven't, please do so. But tons of sessions, workshops, talks, and even keynotes around agentic AI and also AI agents, and of course RAG LLMs. But least we forget traditional machine learning and data science still matters. So tons of that as well to help you upskill as well as stay current. So very excited around that, and our program there keeps growing, so please do check it out. If you can join us in lovely Boston in May, please do so. But if you can't join us in person, don't forget to join us virtually. And for those of you who are new to AI, I know a lot of you listen to this podcast, join this live stream to figure out, what's all the fuss about these reasoning models, what's all the fuss about agentic AI and AI workflows, is it overhyped? Those and other questions will be answered shortly, but the short answer is no. And if you're looking to reskill, upskill, or transition to an AI career, our boot camp, which we have starting April 1st, and that'll be run by yours truly. We cover everything from data wrangling to programming to LLMs, AI agents, RAG systems, generative AI, and beyond. So that's an 8-course, 4-week program that you may be very interested in. And speaking of trending topics for 2025, apart from AI agents and reasoning models, I have become very interested with my own team, my own software development team around prompt engineering, because this matters to what you're doing, whether you're working with reasoning models or AI agents. Prompt engineering has gone from providing an agent with, providing an assistant, I should say, like ChatGPT with simple instruction, to getting quite complicated. So I'll be giving a session on that next week for free, and check that out. And of course, this live stream will be recorded as a podcast. Once we edit that down, and that you can check all those out in your favorites podcast streaming service, such as Apple or Spotify, what have you, and they're also available on the ODSC.com podcast. All right, so with that, let's get started. So I'm delighted to welcome Valentina Alto to our live stream and podcast. And Valentina is an AI and apps tech architect at Microsoft, focusing on analytics and AI workloads, and she has been working on customers' digital transformations, including designing cloud architecture and modern data platforms, including machine learning and generative AI. And she's also a technical author and author of a number of very interesting books in this space, including on generative AI and large language models. And we'll be posting links to those books later. But with that, Valentina, welcome to our live stream and podcast.
Hello, and thanks for having me today. I'm super excited. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yeah, so Valentina, it has to be said, I think, first and foremost, a lot of people are saying 2025 is the year of AI agents and agentic AI. You've already given a number of great talks and workshops at ODSC and some of our events and other conferences as well out there around agentic AI. So you, and especially your role at Microsoft, you've been ahead of the curve on all that, I would say. And I was just doing some research last week, looking at some industry reports from large consultant agencies, and I noticed that Gartner had listed agentic AI as their, I don't know if it was their number one technology trend for 2025, but it was up there. now I was looking at McKinsey reports, and they're saying that most enterprises plan to adopt agentic AI across various operations, from customer service to manufacturing. And it was very similar reports from Boston Consulting Group, Deloitte, Capgemini. They all echoed similar sentiments. So why are all these major enterprises focusing on agentic AI, and what's driving their particular interest in this technology?
Well, many things, I would say, but to start with, probably we need to understand what is an AI agent and why it matters in the landscape of generative AI, but more broadly speaking, in the landscape of technology, and how we are redefining not only automation, but also applications and customer experiences. So if we think about AI agents, probably we need to think about these kind of AI-powered entities that are provided with a series of things, right? The first one is a clear mission or job description. So it's basically the natural language description that you provide the agent with in order to accomplish a specific goal. And this hyper specialization is one ingredient that differentiates AI agents from traditional generative AI, which is general purpose. Then AI agents are also provided with knowledge which is specific, domain specific to what we want our agent to operate within, like the domain that we want our agent to be specialized in. And then I would say most importantly, AI agents are provided with skills or tools. What's that? So basically, this is probably the differentiator number one. Skills are capabilities that we provide the agents with in order to perform things around in the surrounding ecosystem. And when I say surrounding ecosystem, I refer to technological platforms that surround the entity that we build as an AI agent. Those might be, for example, system of records, might be existing processes, might be applications. And the way these tools are orchestrated by the AI agent, it's probably the core, the beauty of this new technology and why everyone is talking about that. So remember that an AI agent is powered by a large language model. So we are talking about a proper brain, right? Now, this brain is able to orchestrate all these tools or these capabilities that we provide our agent with, thanks to its intelligence and thanks to the autonomy that we provide the agent with. So let's say that autonomy, tools, and system message or job description are probably the main ingredients that compose an AI agent. And the reason why it matters is because AI agents are redefining the way we work from a productivity perspective, the way we automate processes from an RPA perspective, and the way we develop applications from a customer experience perspective.
Yeah, Valentina, I'd be remiss because you've done a number of talks and workshops for us at ODSC, and we just had a AI Builder Summit about a month ago, which you gave a great session there as well. And I'd be remiss, so I think a lot of our audience already knows you from those from ODSC and the other events we're talking about. But you've been in this space a long time, so way before we had large language models and agentic AI. Would love if you could give us a little bit more about your background, because I touched upon some of it, but your role there at Microsoft and the books you've written and maybe a few key moments in your career, if you don't mind. And then we'll get back into agentic AI.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Why not? So I joined Microsoft 4 years ago, actually 5, now that I think about that, in Microsoft Italy. And my background is I'm a data scientist. So I loved, by the way, the introduction that you did, talking about how machine learning is still important in that landscape. I 100% agree. So around data science, joined Microsoft as a solution specialist in Azure, focusing on cloud architectures. I was a cloud specialist. And then I transitioned towards the data and AI domain. So I was focusing mainly on machine learning, AI. And then November 2020, and Azure OpenAI conversation started. And I was fortunate enough to be a sales specialist in AI back then. So I had the opportunity of working on amazing projects with customers in Italy, and in the first year of generative AI, basically. So starting from standard retrieval augmented generation projects, and then moving towards more complex pipelines, including agentic AI. And then 8-9 months ago, I relocated to Dubai as a technical architect in AI and app innovation. And I decided to transition towards the app landscape of the conversation, because when we talk about AI applications, well, as the name suggests, we need to know about applications, right? So I was feeling like the conversation from pure AI was shifting towards how do we develop around large language models? How do we build the business logic around large language models? And that, by the way, is what working with AI agents is about. And probably we will touch base on that later on in the podcast, but building AI agents has reshaped the way we develop applications. So I think that we are living in a very exciting moment in software development domain, not only generative AI.
Yeah, I think I'm losing a bit there, Valentina, or maybe it's my connection. Let's see here. Okay, Valentina, I think I lost you there for a second, but I
lost you for a couple, but now I can hear.
Yeah. Maybe Ira can give me an update. Which of us has experienced technical difficulties? Give me 1 second. Yeah, I think it's a bit on your side, Valentina, but no worries. We got the gist of that, and that's more importantly because you mentioned some very important components there of agentic AI and AI systems. You had that large language model, which you mentioned is the brain, and you know, we have autonomy, tools, and skills are the main ingredients. But I think it's good to set context here because we want to talk about, because one of the questions I have are, you know, how are AI assistants, how are AI agents and agentic workflows different from AI assistants? And I think some people kind of get confused about what is an AI assistant. And to me, AI assistants really came about when we had when I got my first Amazon Alexa and then Apple HomePod. And I was able to ask it like, what's the weather today? And then I would ask it a follow-up question. You know, do I need an umbrella? And it wouldn't know how to answer, right? So it didn't have that brain, but it was kind of like an AI assistant or a voice assistant. And then, of course, I still count Claude and ChatGPT as AI assistants, right? And that was late 2023. We could type questions in, and to this day, we can get wonderful answers and next token prediction out of these AI assistants. So how would you define, I'm not sure if I got that right, but how would you define AI assistants and how this new wave of agentic AI is different from AI assistants? Because I think a lot of people, especially when I talk to them in business, they kind of struggle with that. And if you can dive into that question a little bit.
Yes, of course. So you made the example of Alexa, right? So think about that. Would Alexa be able to add to your cart an item if you want to buy something on Amazon? I don't think so, right? Or would Alexa be that hyper specialized to provide you with an exact information which is part of a very specific domain, maybe not available on the web, which you might want to infuse in the job description that you provide your AI agent with? So these two elements, I would say, hyper personalization and toolkit to perform actions are probably the main differentiator between an AI agent and an AI assistant. And again, very important, the autonomy. Autonomy is, let's say, the ingredient needed in order to operate with the tools that the agent is provided with. So an AI assistant is a general purpose chat, I would say, that might be powered by a large language model. And if this is the case, we will have an amazing conversational experience. However, it is not hyper specialized, so it doesn't have a very specific mission. Tools with the ability of performing actions on our behalf. So there are the two main differentiators that I would say in terms of AI assistant versus AI agents. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think we lost the last 30 seconds there, Valentina. I apologize. You're lost it as well. If you can repeat the last part on the autonomy part. I just around the autonomy section there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, of course. No, of course. So the autonomy is the capability of the AI agent of orchestrating tools and actions, right? So performing actions in an autonomous way, deciding when to do what. That's the autonomy that differentiated an AI agent from an assistant. So conversational back and forth experience, AI assistant, versus autonomous and actionable experience, AI agent.
Yeah. Exactly. And so let's talk a little bit about the major advancements, technological or otherwise, that have facilitated this transition, right? Because you mentioned the most important one, which is, of course, the large language models. They act as that brain. And that's been a big deal. And they've moved us on a bit. But if you can walk us through that, because I think when ChatGPT 2.5 came out, we're in a very different place now with ChatGPT, with OpenAI's 4.5, which is just released a few weeks ago. Now all these reasoning models. So yeah, if you can talk a bit more about what are the other major advancements, because it was LLMs and other advancements that made this possible.
Sure. So if we try to, let's say, accelerate the last 2 years and a half in a few minutes, let's say that we started with a large language model, for example, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is actually an application around a large language model, but at the end of the day, it's an API call. So we're not adding any application logic around that. The first problem that we faced with applications similar to ChatGPT was that large language models are limited in their knowledge. They don't know about up-to-date information, and luckily they don't know about our private information, right? So the first milestone that we achieved was infusing knowledge base, external knowledge base to these models. And this approach is called retrieval augmented generation, meaning allowing the model to navigate and surface an external knowledge base so that the context that we provide the model with is relevant for us. That was the very first milestone, I would say. The second one is probably the multimodality. So when we talk about large language models, as the name suggests, we refer to text, right? Text input, text output. However, the architecture of this model can actually handle diverse data. And the beauty of large multimodal models, meaning models that are able to input and output different format of data, is that these models keep the same reasoning capabilities of large language models, yet applied to a broader variety of data. Meaning that I can reason over images, asking questions in natural language and receiving as an output an image, for example. So these large multimodal models actually mimic the way our brain works, perceiving things around in different format, different input in different format. And then we started moving towards the agentic conversation, meaning that adding capabilities, like actionable capabilities to these models was probably the third milestone that we achieved. Meaning that, again, not only generating content, but also executing functions or performing operations in the surrounding ecosystem was something that we started providing our LLMs with. I would say the first glimpse of agentic AI, even if it was not by definition an AI agent, was the function calling capability introduced by OpenAI. So the capability of an LLM of invoking different functions. With the AI agent, we are, let's say, adding an extra layer of intelligence since we are providing a clear mission or system message to the agent. So we are hyper-specializing it. And then, of course, in parallel, we are advancing from a research perspective, meaning that, for example, we now have small language models, right? A new category of models that are more manageable, can be deployed offline or on-prem more easily, and can be fine-tuned more easily. Fine-tuning means training the model to hyper-specialize it, but not training it all in its entirety, but just in a subset of parameters, meaning that you are not spending a lot of money and a lot of time, but rather just tuning or adjusting the way the model performs. And small language models are very manageable from this perspective. And this in a way goes hand in hand with the AI agents conversation as well, because you might have multiple AI agents for multiple purposes needing multiple models. I'll give you an example. If you have an AI agent which is particularly specialized in understanding and generating code, you might want to leverage a specific large language model or a small language model for that, right? But at the same time, this agent could cooperate with another agent which needs another model, maybe a reasoning model like the O1 or DeepSeek, because the kind of task, the kind of job description that it is provided with requires that kind of LLM capability. So the modularity of AI agents, it's also this. So the possibility of plug and play with different components and having full flexibility in the way you initialize these components within an agent.
Yeah, Valentina, thank you so much. So much to unpack there. You touched upon so many of my favorite topics there. Because multimodality is absolutely fascinating. I've seen a number of talks at ODSC, especially around e-commerce and enterprise, how to using these multimodal LLMs as well as agents to improve recommendation systems and helping people shop, like you're on a shopping e-commerce site. Small language models and fine-tuning those has been a big one. And I'm definitely of the camp where it's not going to be one model to rule them all, so to speak. We'll be fine-tuning, as you mentioned, lots of small language models to do lots of specific tasks. And I definitely want to get to multi-agentic systems, which I think we'll get to later in the conversation. And I know folks are posting a number of questions, but don't worry, I see them. I was just looking at some great questions in there, but just to keep the conversation going, I will include those questions kind of when we get to that topic here. And then one of the last things, because you mentioned again, like you must be doing some fascinating work there because you're on the nose when it comes to all these topics. But you mentioned different agents for different models, which I know is a really hard one because we've been looking at some startups that do it's like this idea of a large language model broker, right? Because we know picking the right model for the task is hard, and there's multiple tasks involved. So this concept of an LLM broker, can you send it to one large language model versus the other one, depending on your criteria? It could be cost, it could be latency. And when OpenAI came out with their reasoning models in that blog post, which I should find it for the show notes, they talked about this planner and worker, I would call it a design pattern, right? So maybe you have a planner that might be a reasoning model, calling a cheaper model, it's a worker model. So some great stuff there. And, you know, I think there are some lots of interesting use cases here. So let's kind of touch upon some of the questions here. And I think one thing everyone is concerned about, because when I talk to executives who are coming to ODSCs, for example, I ask them, what's their number one issue with large language models and deploying them in production? The word I keep hearing is trust, right? And then now when you go to AI agents, because you mentioned autonomy a number of times, right?
Yes.
So it's one thing to not trust the output of a large language model. It's quite another, because you just mentioned the use case there of large language models going into, and we can talk about Operator and Manus and these other platforms. I'm not sure if you're up to date in those because stuff is changing quickly, but how do we align, how do we balance rather between an agent's autonomy and its alignment with users' intentions? So even if I just want to book travel is one I keep hearing about, but imagine booking travel to the wrong place and the wrong plane with the wrong amount. Like, I love this use case, but
maybe it's destiny. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm ready to trust an agent there. So let's talk about autonomy and user alignment, if you don't mind, Valentina.
No, of course. So it's, first of all, trust. I feel like it will always be a topic in AI. So we will probably never get to the point where we could trust 100% a fully autonomous system. Or maybe yes, I don't know, but I have the feeling that we will always need to be involved and concerned when it comes to these solutions or applications, right? But back to your question, so autonomy. Let me be more specific about autonomy. Autonomy can have different flavors, it's a range, right? So the beauty of the autonomy within an AI agent is that we can define the degree of freedom that we want to provide our agent with. I'll give you an example. There might be scenarios where you want to hard code the sequence of agents and maybe even the sequence of the tools that are invoked by the agents in a very predefined and scripted fashion. In that case, we might have a sequential workflow. And when I say workflow, I refer to the pattern design of cooperation across different agents. Or you might have a hierarchical workflow where you have different level of abstractions, starting from a supervisor that will orchestrate different agents doing different things. You mentioned the operator from OpenAI, right? So that is an example of a hierarchical multi-agent application, meaning that at the lower level, you will have atomic agents doing one thing, which is an API operation across against a website. Then you will have some agent that will record the screen to understand what's happening. You will have a planner, and then you will have a supervisor. So this is a great level of autonomy, right? But again, it's up to you and how you define the degree of freedom that you want to provide your agent with. I give another example. In the academic field, there are some scenarios of multi-agency where you have a group chat workflow, meaning that you literally leave your agents doing their stuff, talking to each other, for example, generating new ideas. So in that case, it's not a production application or a customer-facing application. It's just a kind of a team of assistants that are super creative and might come up with new ideas that you've never explored. So depending on the use case, you might want to enforce different degrees of freedom and autonomy, but this doesn't exclude, of course, the issue of the trust, because even if with the most hard-coded process, we still need to have a human in the loop to approve, to validate, right? For sure at the beginning. Then we might want to delegate a bit more to the AI agents or a bit less, depending on the output that we are having in the first period of adoption. That's why it's so important, especially for large enterprises, to be equipped with, let's say, blueprints that allows them, technically speaking, to deploy and fail fast. Because there are scenarios that you have to try. There is no golden recipe, especially in the field of AI agents, to define which is the perfect balance between autonomy and hard coding, which is the perfect number of skills or tools that you want to provide your agent with. So I'll give you an example. A question that I'm often asked is, which is the perfect number of actions that an agent should have? I don't know. The thing is, I don't know. We need to try, because actions have different level of complexities. So it's about testing, it's about trying and failing fast in case it is not working out, if it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, because one of the things we struggled with was when you have these multiple agents that are chained together, right? In a workflow, there's a phenomenon where small error rates for each individual agent, can compound dramatically across that chain. So I guess we call it error propagation or error compounding, would be a better way to say it. And that can be challenging in multi-agent systems, but I think your fail fast is a good explanation for that. So you're not just compounding one error on top of another. I think that's really interesting. I do want to go to a few questions here, because I get asked questions similar to this a lot, which is about, okay, well, I understand, everyone is using AI. Let's call them AI assistants right now, like Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT. So a lot of people are familiar with AI assistants. If we can, we'll just label it that. But for those who are not programmers, not developers, not code first, like just walking us through the life cycle of an agentic workflow, because I think we have a question here from David Spurgis. I can think kind of sums it up, because I always talk about the machine learning life cycle, the data life cycle. So we do tend to think a little bit on in life cycles. So I think if you want to take a stab at that question, I can comment on it as well, Valentina.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, and I apologize because I keep forgetting we have a podcast recording on this as well. Either you can read out the question or I can for our listener audience rather.
Do you want me to read the question?
Yeah, if you
Or
don't mind, or your interpretation of the question would be good because you're answering the question.
okay. Can we think of AI agents like state machines? Yes. What I would say is that depending on the degree of autonomy that you provide your agent with, steps might or might not be known in advance. And for example, for an agent with a great autonomy of invoking the right tool at the right time, depending on its own brain, you don't know the steps in advance, right? So you might invoke one action out of the 5 that you provided your agent with or not. And it depends on the agent itself. But yes, like the kind of actions that you mentioned in your comments, like collective information, distill, interpret, etc., are definitely might be part of a plan of an agent. And when it comes to the template or dashboard, so there is no template, I would say, only a kind of canvas that you can have in mind when it comes to designing an AI agent, which is system message, large language model, knowledge, actions, and memory, I would say, because at the end of the day, we might want to keep interacting with the AI agent, keeping a session memory of the conversation. Maybe rather than templates, we do have orchestrators or frameworks that help you creating these agents. Now, these frameworks are typically pro code, and to mention a couple, we have LangChain, Llama Index, or Semantic Kernel. Those are literally libraries that can be imported in your code, and they come with pre-built components that make the development of AI agents easier. But at the same time, there are libraries that provide you with a low-code or no-code user interface to create AI agents, still following the same template of system message, LLM, etc. And an example is Langflow, based on LangChain, or AutoGen, which is, yes, it's a pro-code library, yet provided with a graphical user interface that you can leverage if you don't want to code. But what I would say that as of today, especially if you are building complex multi-agent systems, like developer experience, like AI developer experience might be of great aid, because eventually you might want really to design the backend in a proper way.
Yeah, I think that's answered that question nicely, Valentina. And yeah, it is interesting because it's becoming a very kind of confusing landscape, I would say, as well, because when Operator came out, I think it gave people a different view of agents, because all of a sudden you see these demos of a machine being able to take, an agent being able to take over your machine, interact with dashboards and do stuff like that. And I'm not sure, I've been out of the office a little bit this week, but I'm not sure if you've been following, is it Manus? It was from a Chinese startup, and they released some pretty impressive demos on X, formerly Twitter, showing it going off and doing that long reasoning you talked about earlier, where it goes off for 20 or 30 minutes and comes back. And we've other examples of that, of like there's a number of companies now have this kind of deep research, and these operators and operators like controls are quite interesting, because they're showing quite advanced capabilities. But I don't know, I'm not, the jury's still out in Manus yet. I haven't got access to it, and I'm not sure if you have yet, but it looks quite impressive.
It does.
Yeah.
I didn't have the chance to try it, but my thinking about that, and I don't know, maybe they will do, but the thing is, they are amazing tools for like productivity, but what we need, or better, what enterprises are looking for, is how to land their own agentic state within their ecosystem of applications, right? So integrating agentic capabilities into existing enterprise architecture is probably the main topic of conversation that we are having, because the proliferation of tools, it's amazing. I agree with you, but how relevant are they in the context of enterprise applications?
Yeah, exactly. And so can you talk a little, so speaking of enterprise applications, because you give some great examples there, I mentioned at the very start of this conversation reports from McKinsey and other Capgemini and other groups all looking to use agentic AI. I guess maybe a two-part question. How much of that is just experimentation versus implementation? Like where do you think we are in the, like we know we're very high in a hype cycle, but where are we, speaking of Gartner, where do you think enterprises are in this?
So I can bring the perspective of UAE, where I'm based, and which I think it's a pretty advanced region from an AI perspective. So here we are, I would say, beyond experimentation. Like experimentation is a continuous cycle. So I'm not saying that experimentation is over. What I'm saying is that we are already seeing like concrete projects in production of AI agents and multi-agents applications, which is amazing because it means that the technology works, and we are also able to capture real business value associated to that. And seeing that in real life rather than in a report, it's nice. So I would say that this technology is landing nicely. And what I think what it's really interesting to see is how to make it scalable at enterprise level. And the way that we are seeing it landing, and in general, it's also like the definition of modularity in the AI agent context, is that of like seeing AI agents, skills, tools, and all the APIs that these AI agents are using as repeatable assets that in application development jargon, it's containers, right?
Yes.
So eventually, all these agents will be nothing but APIs provided with a nice label of natural language description so that they can be reused across each others in groups chat, in sequential processes, so that eventually enterprises and startups and individuals might have this catalog of repeatable components that a planner can orchestrate, right? But repeatability is probably the key word when it comes to how do I scale, how do I operationalize a set of agents, how do I go beyond the POC stage, right?
Yes. No, I love that because you reminded me of something we started about. So I also do work for a VC as well, and we about 5 months ago started to build out our own agentic workflow. So let's help our associates with doing something that a typical junior venture capitalist would do. So a big part of that role is to look at all the research reports. So every VC has an investment thesis. So we're looking at things like AI, machine learning, robotics, and when we go to Archive and Google Scholar, there's about 3,000 papers every week almost that are published on various topics which would be interesting, way more than a person does. So we have one agentic workflow and one set of models to look at various, with our system prompts, understanding what our investment thesis is and who's publishing these reports. Should we be interested in them? And venture capital is a lot about figuring out if this is a solution to an unsolved problem, right? And then, of course, we've got an email inbox that gets about, between newsletters and everything, gets hundreds of emails every day. Who's going to go through and look through that? Because there's always nuggets of information. So we've built these this multi-agent agentic workflow. So I'm not sure if you've got any use cases you'd like to share with us, but we're still in the process of building that out. And we essentially want to have one of these multi-agent workflows it does everything from research to discovery to give us feedback. So what we're doing is chaining these agents. And I would even say, like, we're using Perplexity AI as an agent, right? So we need a search agent, and then we need another agent to interpret the agent that did the research to align it with what we're doing. So we're we're finding ourselves doing a little bit of fine tuning, but mostly prompt engineering. That's why I mentioned my
Yes.
talk earlier. Ton of prompt engineering. I think that's such an important skill. Yeah, but I do want to go to some important user questions. But any other specific use cases you'd care to mention? But I know, obviously, the constraints of your role, you can't get too much into it. But yeah, that's one of my favorite one because we're actively working on that. It's a lot of fun, challenging as well, which I can talk about in a minute.
No, I can relate. Like internal documentation is certainly a topic for AI agents. Personally, I'm biased because the cluster of use cases that I love the most are those that are meant to engage customers in new ways. Like as a consumer of mobile applications, this is the conversation that I can relate to the most, right? So use cases where as a user, you do have this new UI, which might be conversational, might be not, that is hiding in the backend a group of agents, of product specialists, for example, working on your behalf, helping you finding the best product, or just showing you things. That is amazing because it's also redefining in a way the UX itself, like having this dynamic UX that can accommodate different users, different profiles, this hyper personalization that was not possible before because you can't physically develop 1,000 UIs depending on the number of users that you are offering your application to. So the way agents are redefining also the overall UI design, customer experience, I think it's a very interesting conversation. So this is the cluster of use cases I'm particularly, let's say, happy to work with.
And I want to highlight a question here from John V, but I'll just speak to it for a second to put it in perspective. But with our limited use cases as well, I don't know, I keep going between like hallucination is more with guardrails is almost a solved problem because what is RAG? RAG is to prevent hallucinations, but we still struggle with hallucination. So if I expand that out, I'm sure my feeling is that a lot of other enterprises still struggle with hallucination for different reasons. One is you can use RAG and guardrails, but there's only so much you can do there. And also as the models get better, hallucinations get more subtle. But I have seen examples where it's been quite blatant hallucinations, especially when I'm doing those multi-agent systems where it's going around. And then of course where everyone's getting concerned about deep fakes getting worse. We see these very, very powerful voice agents now that can emulate our voice. So I'll read out John V's question because he wants us to address the emergent behaviors in Gen AI, like around alignment, such as faking. And John uses pretty strong word here, lying. I still think they're prediction engines, so I would still say it's more prediction. But you can see with poor prompting, poor system prompting, like maybe I give it an alignment thing, and different models now have different types of alignment, right? Like you can pick models with no alignment right now, and I think you gave a great example there, Valentina. Like imagine two agents talking to each other. Like what would they come up with at the end of that? Yeah. So if you can talk to enterprises' concern around, we touched upon alignment earlier, but I think John is talking more deeply here. When you go down these changes, like because I had this podcast, we just released it today. It was with Ivan Lee, and sorry I'm going on here, but we had a podcast on reasoning models, right? And one of the things that Ivan noted, and I've noticed as well, these models are way too positive. They don't want to let you down. They don't want to fail. So you can see how agentic AI, did you complete the task? Yes, I did. And it's like working with anyone else. Did you complete the task? Yes, I did. But to what level and to what quality did you complete the task, right? So these agents are geared to please, to be helpful. And I can definitely envision when they're not being helpful, quite the opposite, where that can lead to some interesting use cases that we're going to have to be very cognizant of. Yeah, so sorry, if you can take your own stab at that, Valentina. Now I'll give my thoughts.
No, I really liked what you said. Like LLM, generally speaking, like to please people. They're People pleaser, I agree. That's why with AI agents, you have two additional, let's say, elements that can leverage. The first one is, again, the system message. I can't stress enough how powerful is a well-written system message, because it's focusing the scope of capabilities of the AI agents. And then you might have another agent, which is the critique, which is the pessimistic agent, the one that is gonna review and boycott the output of the previous agent to make sure that, okay, you're a people pleaser, let me review your output just to make sure that it's actually good, right? But to address the concern in sense of hallucination, which is, I don't want to minimize the answer, just saying just initialize a critique agent, right? So when you develop, generally speaking, AI applications, and now we talk about AI agents, but at the end of the day, AI agents are AI applications. You have to think about different layers of security and guardrailing that you might want to enforce. Think about that as an onion. So at the center of the onion, you have the large language model, and you can do very little about that because the LLM has been trained already, meaning that if it is biased, sorry about that, it is what it is. So your power here is to pick the right LLM. And there are system cards associated with LLMs. You can understand which is the right one to your use case. And then you have the second layer, which is the prompt engineering. So whatever you can actually write in the system message that is going to adjust and tailor and maybe counter bias the behavior of the LLM. And then you have grounding and guardrailing. So grounding, it's basically grounding the model to your knowledge base. So it's retrieval augmented generation. And guardrailing, it's something that you might want to enforce either at the system message level or with some kind of external APIs like content safety. Content safety is an API which will filter like input that are falling into potentially harmful categories. And other tools that can prevent prompt injections, for example, right? So all of this is part of the application logic that you build around the LLM. And then there is the user interface. We don't have to forget that not all AI applications needs to be conversational. So you might want to limit the flexibility of the input that users can provide, which is a way of limiting the risk of hallucination. That might be, for example, by providing starter questions, for example, or providing a form rather than a chat. So these considerations that are part of the design of the AI applications are methods to limit the risk of the model to hallucinate and eventually the AI agent to perform things that you don't want to perform. And last but not least, you mentioned imagine an AI agent invoking tools autonomously. Remember, again, that you can always provide a validation station in between. You can develop your AI agent in such a way that the AI agent, before invoking a tool, will always ask for permission and will not go ahead without. Of course, it will require extra click from your side, but it means that you are reducing the risk of invoking the wrong tool, for example. So all these considerations are part of the AI application design, I would say.
Yeah, I really love that answer, Valentina, because you went through a laundry list of best practices there. Yeah, because grounding I find is so important, and that's for people listening. I think that's excellent advice. And also you mentioned lots of different terms for this, but LLM as a judge, or I prefer to say LLM as a critic, right? Because we started doing that because we were familiar with LLM as a judge, but we started doing what I guess some people are calling AI supervision or AI alignment via AI evaluation, right? So assume that's, so John and others, if you're worried about this, yes, assume that the LLMs are going to do this to a certain extent. So you have another LLM, can be the same model or a different model, with good grounding to making sure you're using one AI to evaluate the outputs of another one. So I think that's very, very sound advice. And I do want to beat my own drum here, Valentina, if you don't mind for a second, because I
Go
remember when I was
ahead.
doing the introduction slides, I was talking about I'm going to do a talk next week on prompt engineering because it just amazes me that I talk to a lot of developers, a lot of people in business, and I think the problem with the AI assistants, they're so good. Like it can be Claude 3.7 Sonnet, it can be ChatGPT. But the assistants are so good that they're very good at working with what I call weak prompts, right? So I can say something like, I guess a well-known example is people asking, I need an exercise routine. Okay, that's a weak prompt, and it will give it to you, right? Because they want to be an example, but that's a weak prompt, and I give it a strong prompt. I am, just starting out, going to the gym for the first time. I want a low impact regime because, I want to sleep better at night. What my goals are versus a strong prompt. So I feel like I struggle to convince people that being better at prompt engineering, prompt design is so important. And then bringing your domain expertise to that prompt design. Because when we talk about grounding and all that stuff, like, well, okay, what grounding? Well, how are you building the system prompts, as you mentioned, around that? And I think that is a skill that people get very caught up in how these agentic AI workflows work, the sophistication of them, but forgetting the level of skills that they can currently bring to the table with good prompt design, some prompt engineering, and certainly bringing their domain expertise. Because what is AI alignment? Well, usually there's some kind of domain alignment. Do you find, like, I'm not sure if that's a perception I have and maybe some misconception, but do you find that across business or development teams that a lot more stress needs to be put on prompt design as well as getting those domain expertise into the agentic workflows?
Yes, 100%. I think that we need to differentiate between two different kind of prompts: the system message and the user prompt.
Yeah.
Prompt engineering is beneficial for both, but user prompt is the end user natural language question that you will ask ChatGPT or I don't know, Manus application. And it's important that we structure the question in the right way. But the system message is the back-end set of instructions that we provide our application with or our AI agent with. And there, prompt engineering is crucial because we are literally shaping what our AI agent is meant to do. Again, think about that as the job description of the agent that you want to hire in your team. So the job description needs to be detailed, needs to list the things that we are expecting our AI agent to be able to accomplish, needs to mention the tools that this AI agent will be able to leverage, the knowledge base that it should be grounded on, and so on. So having the skill set needed to write this set of natural language instructions in the right way with the right formatting, because format matters, right? The order matters. I don't remember the name of the paper, but there is this so-called recency bias, which demonstrates that if you repeat the most important line of the instructions at the end of the system message, it will weight more than if you do that at the beginning, because apparently models remember like the last line better. So you might end up with very different results just by changing the order of the list of instructions that you are providing the AI agent with. So again, super important prompt engineering, especially for AI developers, for users as well, but AI developers is a must.
Yeah, that's my hot take. That's the must-have skill for 2025 is prompt engineering, because the tools are getting so powerful and so user-friendly that they just need good instructions. So my hardest question, I guess, for today is, and I know I've asked you a couple of hard questions, Valentina, so I really appreciate you being such a good sport and allowing me to pepper you with these questions. But so much has happened. Forget about the whole year, but so much has happened in the last couple of weeks and months, right? So these reasoning models are coming out ever since OpenAI's O1, and then we had DeepSeek R1, and of course Operator, and lots of other models coming out as well and capabilities. But looking ahead, what are the I guess again another two-part question, but what are the opportunities or developments that you anticipate AI agents will unlock in the months ahead? Or what are you
These
excited
these
about in
are
the realm of AI agents, which is tricky because I struggle to keep up, let alone predict what's going on.
Look, what I see, and it might be conservative, so I don't know, it's just what I feel, is that it's getting more and more important to define the ecosystem where these agents are going to collaborate. Because the power of one single AI agent or a group of AI agents has been proved, okay? Has been proved. So it means that we know that these things can be done by AI agents. So what we need now is a robust framework where these agents can live. Because again, we mentioned the proliferation of tools to do things, right? LangChain, LangGraph, Manus, operators. We have plenty of these tools. But how do I qualify a proper landing zone in my large enterprise to let these agents live and being consumed in a smart way? So this is probably the main conversation that I'm expecting in the upcoming months, and yes, it will be up to architects and AI developers to solve the dilemma. But yes, this is my view, and of course I'm expecting cooler and cooler applications to pop up. But again, like sealed and applications rather than platform. So I think that the shift here is how do we enable the platform for us as enterprise to build, deploy, and manage the life cycle of AI agents.
Yeah, that's such an important point because we don't have time to go over all the tools, but Microsoft, kind of led the charge with Copilot to a certain degree. And Azure, the platform you mentioned, there's lots of great tools out there as well. But you also mentioned LangChain, LambIndex, there's Crew AI, and there's many, many more. And I was at a conference last week and I was speaking to a number of people in the industry there, and that was something that they were looking to bring people together. How do we have and I think I'm talking about more generally, but how do we have an agentic framework that can people, there's so many tools to learn out there. So what do we focus on? What is the industry going to focus on? Because I'm not sure if do you remember Onyx, which was the open source format and was used to, you want to facilitate this interoperability amongst various machine learning and deep learning frameworks, right? Remember?
Oh yes, yes,
So
the
it's
open
10 years
source
ago or
format,
7 years ago.
like
Exactly.
templatizing and standardizing models. I remember, yes.
Yeah, standardizing models, and it
Good.
worked to a certain degree because you had so many machine
Yeah.
learning and deep learning frameworks. How do we standardize them? And I think you're right because there's so many frameworks out there, and they all have great capabilities. But it seems like wedding yourself to one framework is so difficult because as
And
the
you don't
space
have
moves so
to. I
fast.
think that you don't have to. The moment you
Yeah,
eventually decide that your skills and your agents will be APIs, because an API is agnostic, right? So you might
true.
want to develop one agent in LangChain, the other one in semantic kernel. I'm not saying that it's a best practice, but I'm saying that the way AI agents are built and consumed kind of allows this flexibility of tools as well.
Yeah.
So of course, having one framework might be easier, but it's not a hard. I don't see it as a hard requirement. Let's say in that way.
Yeah. I had this debate with a developer as well, and I basically said, well, in a couple of years, or even sooner, the agents will be so good it can just recode it all to the latest framework to do the switching automatically, refactoring, as we say. So we'll see.
True.
Yeah, we'll see how good a job does that. But one other thing I want to bring up, Valentina, is you are speaking at ODSC East. You're going to be hosting a virtual workshop, so everyone listening can actually join in as well if they choose to. Can you talk a little bit about because I believe your virtual workshops is going to be on multi-agent systems?
Thanks for saying the title, because to be honest, I didn't remember the title. So yes, I assume that it's on multi-agency. So yes, we will talk about multi-agents workflows. So different way of designing the way these agents can collaborate, and we will probably rely on one orchestrator I think I mentioned LangGraph in the abstract, but I will keep it flexible because, we are evolving. So we will see what the market will have to offer. But again, the thing, like the way I really want to, to depict this new kind of agentic state that we are trying to build in general in our organizations is that of modularity and abstraction. So that approach of containerizing skills, tools, and agents as repeatable assets that we can consume regardless of the code or the framework that we use to develop them. Of course, if you're using LangGraph, it's automatic to orchestrate these components through LangGraph, but it's not the only option. So we will see how we will shape this conversation. But yes, this is the idea. We will talk mainly about multi-agency. And we will see, of course, some nice demo and code.
Excellent. Yeah. So, because I'm sure when people are listening to this podcast or you're actually on this live stream right now, our questions have resulted in yet more questions for you. And let me tell you, having seen a number of Valentina's talks and workshops, she is one of the best in the business of explaining this stuff. Very hard.
I'm glad.
No, seriously. And I see a lot of talks, but it's very hard to explain this stuff in the abstract. So, even if you're not a coder, check out some of Valentina's work online. She does an excellent job of explaining these quite sophisticated workflows. And speaking of which, Valentina, you mentioned any other ways to follow you, because you mentioned LinkedIn. You published a number of books. Yeah, if you can talk a little bit about how you're educating people in this space and how to follow you, I would love to hear.
Sure, I love to act like the influencer that I am not. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, which is the only social media that I use. So, and Medium as well, which is publishing platform where you can find many interesting publications in data science, AI, etc. So I have a Medium account where I publish my articles. And I also have, now that I remember that, Notion website where you can find all my articles for free. Because Medium, I think you need to have an account to read articles, but I will share also the personal page that I have, which is free, so you can see all my articles there. I do have a GitHub account as well, where I publish repositories from articles or from sessions with ODSC or other organizations. And I also wrote 2 books with Pact Publishing that you can find either on Amazon or directly on the Pact website. And I think it's it. That's it. I don't remember whether
that's enough on here. That's a lot of work. Okay. That's a lot of work.
Okay.
Yeah, check out the books. I think we talked about that earlier, and that's cool. So your articles are on Notion. That's excellent. Yeah, if you can send me that link, Valentina. I'll also include it in our show notes for our podcast listeners.
Sure.
So Valentina, I know there was a few questions we didn't get to, so I apologize to my audience about that, but we are pretty much an hour into this, and that has been so insightful. As I like to say, this really was an education. Loved your explanation, your deep dives into the agentic AI frameworks, and I definitely feel like I'm coming away with a better understanding and maybe a few little tips on how to implement this better. So thank you so much, and as always, we're going to be looking forward to your virtual session at ODSC East in Boston.
Same here, and thanks a lot for having me here. And see you in Boston virtually.
No, our pleasure, Valentina. Thank you so much for taking the time and communicating with us. So bye for now.
Bye for now.
Okay, everyone, that's a wrap. So as we mentioned, don't forget to check out all our podcasts on odsc.com podcast. You can also, I think we have, let me just bring this back up again so you have it, but don't forget, we talked about the importance of prompt engineering there. So if you have a second, zap that QR code. And if you're looking at this or listening to this later, you can always, I think our AI plus training platform there will have a recording of this as well. Because like I said, I'm really excited to give this talk because I do feel like prompt engineering is a very important skill. And I think someone is asking for the name of those books again. Maybe someone listening can provide the name of Valentina's books. So do check out prompt engineering. And if you have a chance, if you're new to AI, check out our go to ODSC.com Boston, check out our boot camp. We're going to be starting that on April 1st. We have 8 courses there over 4 weeks. It's an accelerated learning program, but don't worry, it's also recorded and on demand as well. So you will come out the other end of that learning a lot more about LLMs and AI than you did going in. And then don't forget about ODSC, where you can hear from Valentina and lots of other fantastic speakers there. We have about 152 lined up so far. So great. All right, everyone, if that's all for today, thank you so much for joining me on this Friday. And we will see you at the next one. So goodbye for now.